Okay, for the final portion of our maze game tutorial, we're going to add in movable character sprites, meaning the sprite will now change directions depending on which way you're traveling, so it's a nicer graphic. And we'll talk about animated GIFs. And also we'll add a few features like movement squares, so that you step on a certain spot of the floor and it shoots you forward or up or down or left to right. And that can add some challenging aspects. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. The player is moving around, and you'll notice that as I turn left and right, the character faces a different direction. If I face up or down, it looks different as well. And we've got these blocks here that I can't go against the arrows. But if I step forward, if you'll see when I move up, the character is going to go, my mouse disappears. It's going to go up and then to the right in this area here. So I'll go up, and it gets kind of scooted out of the way. This is a really interesting level here because it kind of forces you to think about how you're traveling. As soon as you touch on an arrow, you're out of control. It shoots you in whatever direction it goes. And that's sort of a challenging aspect to the game. Okay. Anyway, we'll add those and some other features. And the other features, I'm not going to even show you how to do it. I'm just going to ask that you implement them somehow. Okay. All right. So I'll walk you through how to set up your character animations and these squares, these arrows on the floor. And then I'll have a few more requests. Okay. Step number 1 is to import a new sprite. So create a sprite, and we will call this spr_person_nice. Load sprite. You'll find person nice in your resources folder. Click open. And you'll notice, just like the explosion, this sprite has a number of sub-images, 4. And you can click through and see the 4 different items there. If you edit the sprite, you can see what they're numbered: image 0, image 1, image 2, and image 3. 4 images, numbers 0 through 3. That's going to be important in just a minute. Okay, we'll click OK, and let's go down to our person object and double click that. We need to change the sprite, and we're going to change the sprite to person nice. Now, if that's all we do, we have problems. Let me show you the very first problem you'll encounter. Okay, problem number 1 is our character is spinning in a circle. And we can move, but he is a spinning machine at this point. All right, what's happening there is the computer is seeing that there's 4 elements to this graphic, to this sprite, and it's rotating through all of them. And that's the standard way that GameMaker handles animated GIS. It just runs through every image in the list over and over again. So what we're going to do is add an event, a create event, and when the person is created, we're going to change the sprite to person nice, which, I mean, it already is person nice, but by using this action, we get to control which sub-image and the speed that it rotates through. So we're going to start at sub-image 0. We're going to change the speed to 0. And now if we start the game, he's going to stay put in this image 0 mode. Okay, so what's left beyond that is to change the sprite based on which way they're moving. So as soon as they're aligned with the grid, they press this key. If they're aligned with the grid, they get to move. Since we're going to have more than one instruction here, we have to use blocks. It's not an option. It won't work if we don't. So we're going to put blocks out there. And then we're going to add in the change sprite. And if we're moving to the left, that's going to be sub-image. You know, I forget. We're going to set the speed to 0, though. I think it might be sub-image 1, but I might need to come back and change that. Let's double-click our sprite just to make sure we remember. 0 is down, 1 is up, so that's wrong. 3 is facing to the left. So So let me change that here. Make sure it's subimage 3, and then we're good. So that's basically what we need to do here. So let's go into each one of our actions, and we'll add a couple of blocks, and then we'll change the sprite. And so this time we're moving up, and that's subimage 1, speed 0. Let me verify that. Yep, subimage 1 is up. So moving to the right, we're going to need to use subimage 2. So we'll add a couple of blocks, and sprite, person nice, subimage 2, speed of 0. Click OK. Just want to jump back up here and make sure that I didn't actually select the sprite, so that's good that we do that. Otherwise he would have seemed to have disappeared when we turned a certain direction. Okay, looking good. Last one is down, and that's subimage 0. So we're going to go to Control, add a couple of blocks, main one, add the sprite 0, speed of 0, and that's okay. Just double checking this. All right, I think that will work. If we try to play the game now, that will prove whether or not our character A is spinning in circles and B responds correctly to the keyboard. Okay, we're not spinning, that's good. Move to the right, move to the left, up, and oh, okay, this is good. We get to see an error message. Okay, so it says setting instance to non-existing sprite, -1. So when you see one of these errors, make sure you follow the list here. Error in action number 3 of the keyboard event for the down key for object person. All right, so you're going to go to our person object. We're going to look for the event, the keyboard event down. We're going to look at the third action. We should see an error here that says setting the instance to non-existing sprite, -1. All right, let's abort, go back in. Remember, it was the person object, the keyboard down, and the third action, which is this guy right there. Third action, 1, 2, 3. The block counts as an action. All right, we set it to no sprite. That's the problem. And here we go. Person nice, 0, 0. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, up, right, left, down. It all works perfectly. Great. Next, we're going to decide how we're going to place these arrows on the ground and how they are going to affect the player. So very first thing we'll do is import the sprites. And I forget what they're called. Probably sprite arrow, sprite up maybe. Let's look at the list and see. Move up, move down, move left, move right. Okay, so those are the ones. So we'll start with move down. And so make sure you name it SPR _ move down. Make sure it's transparent and click OK. Load sprite. We'll do move up, move left. SPR _ move left. And move right. SPR _ move right. And finally, move up. SPR _ move up. Okay, here's our 4 sprites. They're transparent, so they look a little strange here, but they'll look better with the color underneath them in the game. All right, what do we do with these objects? Well, really, we do nothing with them. We'll create objects for them, sorry, but we won't actually do any actions or anything. So if we do an object, create an object, and we'll call it obj underscore move down, and we'll choose the move down sprite. That's okay. And we'll create another one, obj underscore move left, and we'll choose the move left. And obj underscore move right. Grab the move right sprite. Finally, obj underscore move up, and the move up sprite. Okay, those objects don't need to do anything, they just need to be objects so that we can define what happens when a player collides with that object. Alright, here's how we're going to set up the arrows on the ground. First of all, go to your object person and add a step event. And when you add the step event, it's regular step, not begin or end, just regular step. And then, let me close that. Here's what it's going to look like. And I'm not going to go through and type them all in, I'm just going to show you what they should look like. First of all, if the instance is aligned with the grid, if the player is aligned with the grid, then let's check if there's a certain object at a position. We're going to check to see if there is a move up object. Remember that this is Game Maker's version of this level. So they named it something different than we did. Ours was obj underscore move up. But anyway, look for that object at 0, 0 relative to the player, meaning if the player's touching it, if the player's there. And if that's true, then start moving in a direction. In this case, move up. We're going to move up at a speed of 8, which should be, that's double what your normal speed is. And then, if the instance is aligned with the grid, oh, I didn't explain that, by the way. If the instance is aligned with the grid, we're setting it here to snap horizontal 32, but snap vertical 8. What that means is the player doesn't have to be completely on the arrow for it to start taking over and moving him. If the player moves just a fourth of the way onto the grid, it's going to start grabbing him and speeding him up. And that's why this one's 32, because this arrow that we're talking about first is the move up arrow. And so the vertical snapping is what we want to watch out for. In other words, if the player's moving up the screen and he just starts to touch the edge of the up arrow, we're going to zip him off and take him away. But if he's coming at it sideways, so if there's an up arrow right here and the player's coming at it sideways, then we're going to wait until he gets actually all the way on before he gets taken off. And that's why it's 32 for horizontal. So whatever way the arrow is taking you, we're going to snap at a smaller amount so that as soon as they barely touch it, it's going to take off. Okay, so 32 and 8 for the first one. And then move up is 0, 0 relative. Okay? And if that's the case, we're going to start moving up at a speed of 8. And then once they're moving, we're going to check again if they're aligned with the grid. And this time we're going to check the same way. Horizontal 32, vertical 8. And if there happens to be a move down arrow at 0, 0 relative to the player, in other words, if the player is touching a move down arrow, then let's start moving him down at a speed of 8. And here's where we change it up. This is a side-to-side move, so if the instance is aligned with the grid, horizontal is 8 and vertical is 32, meaning this is going to be a left arrow or a right arrow. And as soon as they get really close to touching it, even if they're just 8 pixels in to the square, it's going to take off. But if they're coming at it from vertically up or down and it's a side arrow, then when they have to move all the way onto the arrow before it takes off. So that's just the way they decided to design this system. Okay, so 8 and 32 for that one. We're looking for object move left at 0, 0 relative to the player. In other words, if the touch... We're looking for the move left object at 0, 0 relative to the player. In other words, is the player touching the move left arrow? If so, then we're going to start moving in a direction left at a speed of 8. Finally, if this is the same as the last one, horizontal is 8, snap, vertical is 32. If there is a move right object under the player, then we're going to start moving him at a speed of 8. We're going to move to the right. Click OK. Now, here's a thing to consider. Why are there no blocks in this section? Okay, there's none of these blocks here. You've got an if statement here and another if statement and then an action. If statement, action. Remember, I told you guys that if there's only one action after the if statement, then it doesn't really affect anything. You could leave the blocks off. I prefer you put the blocks in. I want you to all use blocks every time you use an if statement. So really what this should look like is this. Here's a block, okay, and here's a block, and here's a block, and here's a block. Okay, do you see what's happening there? So if we're aligned with the grid, then let's do this system here. If there's an object at a position, then move the player, and then we drop down and we do the next one. So you could fill in all those blocks, and that would organize it a little better. But you know, when you don't have one, when you only have one action per if statement, technically they're not needed. Okay, so that's how that would look, and that should take care of the arrows. Now, another thing that's in this version is we're going to give the monsters the ability to have a better graphic as well. So let's take a look at that. You can import new monster sprites, and those are right here. The Game Maker people put them inside of a folder. If you want to do that, you can right-click here and choose Insert Group to make a new group, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so you insert or import the Sprite Monster 1, Sprite Monster 2, Sprite Monster 3, but grab the nice versions this time. Okay, down in the monster objects, of course, you'll need to change the sprite from the old Ghost or whatever it was to this new version. And to make sure that the animations for these monsters works correctly, I'll show you the sprite real quickly. It's got some sub-images, left and right, up and down. This particular monster only moves left to right. That's what Monster 1 does. So we only need to be concerned about the left and right option. So here's how you do that. Add an event, step, but this time do end step. And what that does is it checks for this at the end of every step. So it's just a little different than using the step. You want to make sure all the other actions are finished before you check this. So if the horizontal speed is smaller than 0, by the way, let's see, this is a check variable. If you go to Control, you can see down here at the bottom, variables. Variables are numbers that Game Maker can keep track of. You can create your own. We'll get into that at a different time. But there are some that are inherent in game objects, and H-speed and V-speed are part of every object in the game. And we've already used those before to test when we're moving blocks, to test where we were going to move the block to. So H-speed and V-speed just need to be checked. So you drag this out here, and the way you set it up is if H-speed is smaller than, you can change that with this menu here, is smaller than 0, okay, then we're going to change the sprite into Sprite Monster 1 subimage 3 speed of 0. Otherwise, meaning he's moving horizontally at a positive value, then we're going to change it to subimage 2. Okay, so if the horizontal speed is negative, that means that we're moving to the left. But if the horizontal speed is positive, that means we're moving to the right. And so that's why we'll change it into subimage 2, which is that one. Okay, that's how that works. It's similar for the up and down monster. Up and down, end step, but we're checking vertical speed. And if vertical speed is smaller than 0, then we're changing it to subimage 1, which is moving up. So vertical speed is smaller than 0. That means he's moving north. Otherwise, if the vertical speed is greater than 0, that means he's moving south. This is all based on the X and Y grid coordinate system. So if this is 0, 0, then moving to the right increases X, moving to the left decreases X. Up and down is the Y axis, and that's where this is getting its values from. Okay, that should take care of it. The tricky one is the third monster, which can move in all directions. So on the end step, you'll need to check if h speed is smaller than -1. Then set the variable image index to 3. This is another way to do what we just did by changing the sprite. But image index is a variable that's attached to all objects, and so you can choose to do that instead. So if h speed is smaller than -1, set the index to 3. If it's larger than 1, set the image to 2, and so on and so forth. So really quickly, I'll open up each one of these, and that way you can pause the video and take a look at what the settings are. Okay, there's that one. Okay, that'll take care of your ghost. I'm sorry, your third monster, which can move in lots of directions. Okay, that is, I think, the essence of what we're going to be doing here. Here are some things that I want you to do on your own. If you look through the sprite list, you'll see that there is a life image. That's a heart. I want you to create an extra life object so that when the player runs over this heart object in the game, that the player gets a new life. Also, there is a bonus object. It's a little spinning coin-looking thing. When the player runs over the bonus, he should get bonus points. And also, what I'll have you do for the player's lives down at the bottom of the screen down there, create your own sprite. Just go in and create a sprite, and then just edit the sprite. And there's nothing there right now, but you can double-click this, and you can zoom in on it, and you can design your own sprite to represent how many lives there are. So you might want to make a big dark red L. Something like this. And that could be the lives, or you guys can decide what you want to do for that. But display a new graphic for the lives down at the bottom next to the score. Okay, once again, you need to create a bonus object that gives you points, a heart object that gives you lives, and a new graphic to indicate how many lives the player has left. When you finish this tutorial, there will be a handout for you that describes the requirements of this project. So this part of the tutorial is just building the game, but then you're going to have to make it your own. You're going to have to build a certain number of levels with a certain number of requirements on there, and so everybody's game will ultimately be different. All right, so that's what's coming up next.